Welcome back to the Volvo Ocean Race. We are 14 days and 59 minutes into leg 8 and it is drawing to its close. Only 554 miles remain between Team Brunel out in the lead still and then the final conclusion to this leg in Newport, Rhode Island. Can they hang on? Well, let's see. First off, yesterday we asked you to vote and you did, thank you very much. And so sort of following up on your suggestions, we had a chat just recently with Vestas 11th Hour Racing skipper Charlie Enright, so all of the latest sort of scoops on his strategy and his thoughts on finally going into Newport coming up just in a moment. Also, well, Team Brunel is out in the lead and they have been killing it in these last couple of legs. They've been doing really, really well. And so now is our opportunity to sort of peek behind the curtain and understand a little bit more about how they've been able to sort of engineer this comeback. So we'll be talking about that. And then also, I'll be talking about boat trim and how to make a Volvo 65 go fast. So all of that is coming up. However, let's have a look at positions out on the virtual tracker. So, well, this is not the America's Cup, but you might be forgiven for thinking that because we are grinding down the miles towards Bermuda as well as Newport, Rhode Island. So we've been saying that there's a jibe coming up, and indeed a jibe there was. You can see on the track the top two leaders in the boats, Team Brunel and Dongfeng Race Team, did a little jig-jag out to the left-hand side, trying to stay in stronger pressure out there. It worked for them, but let's have a look at what those jibes look like overnight.
Last night the breeze started dropping quite a bit, and Dongfeng was the weather of us did two jibes, and basically just to stay in between them and the finish, we matched their jibes. Ideally, I think we would have continued on, but since they are the closest to us, you just have to play their game at this stage. Right now they are about 8 miles dead upwind behind us, so in that sense it's a safe position. Looks like another 5-6 hours on this board and then the final jibe into Newport, so will be exciting.
So the situation is still that we're getting lifted into this high pressure system to our right, and so last night we put in a short jibe out to the west because the wind was getting lighter. We thought we were getting too close to the high pressure system, so we jibed away for an hour or two and then set ourselves up again on the starboard jibe. Still chasing Brunel. They made a little gain on us. They managed to sail a little bit lower BMG than us, so a bit of a gain to them. But all setting up for tonight, what's coming. We're going to get a front, so we're going to be lifted into this high pressure. We're going to jibe onto port, and then the wind's going to increase quickly, and it's going to be quite a nervous front, so we're going to have quite a fair bit of wind, probably a fair bit of squall action happening. So it'll be a night filled with action, full packed action.
So Team Brunel and Dongfeng Race Team keeping a really close eye on each other, but there's another dog in this fight. Vestas 11th Hour Racing is just out to the east, and Charlie Enright gave us his opinions about how this option might play out.
You know, we've kind of been to the east of this lead pack here, you know, for a couple days now, and that situation set itself up in the doldrums, essentially. You know, we went through there, or we went in there, I should say, in a pretty strong position, kind of bow forward on the group, and ran into a little bit of cloud activity, and you know, partially through what we were able to sail, and partially through what we kind of set our objective to be. We ended up a little bit more northeast than the rest of the group, and it's been okay at times. You know, so we've managed to, you know, reduce the range and put these guys back on bearing, you know, every now and then, and the situation kind of reverses itself, you know, every now and then as well. So, you know, the last sked we were particularly high. You know, at the same time, you can only really sail the breeze that you have, you know. So I guess part of us is a little nervous being up here closer to the center of the high, but At the same time, we were a little quicker than the guys to leeward, and we put them back, 10 to 15 degrees. So, maybe what's making us nervous is what helps us, get a piece of them here in this next jibe. So, you can only do what we can do, and we are where we are. But it's all going to play out over the next, probably 10 hours. This should be hopefully, this should be the bottom of the pressure, and we should actually jibe in 17 to 18 knots or something like that as the high kind of moves out to the east. So. And if that's the case, we're sitting in an okay position here. We're averaging about 15 degrees true right now, which is kind of in line with the GFS and the NAM suggested routing. We take comfort in the fact that the EC suggests maybe a little bit of higher course, less BMG, and more spearing off into the ship. So not too worried about losing pressure. But if this is the bottom and it increases from here and it rotates the way it's supposed to, we'll see. A lot's going to happen between now and the finish. We're going to jibe here in about 8 hours time, and then we're going to go through some pretty nasty prefrontal 35 plus knot running conditions through the Gulf Stream. At which point we'll cross the front, it'll head, and then we'll tack and head towards Newport. So there's 2 maneuvers and a couple peels and a lot of nuance to, what's essentially 48 hours left in this leg. So when it's that complicated, I don't know how much home field advantage there can be. But, we're kind of hoping with a westerly component to the breeze, maybe it's not that gnarly. But, gnarly is also opportunity. So, we're optimistic about the chances that we have ahead. And then coming into Newport, it's really funny. We got this blocked out TSS exclusion zone, and there's never any traffic there usually. So the way it kind of plays out, we either have to sneak up the western wall over by Point Judith, or actually kind of come at Narragansett Bay via Buzzards Bay. So that's gonna be interesting. It could come down to that in the end, because it's maybe a little more pressure to one side with a little greater distance, and maybe a little better angle, a little less distance on the other. So it'll be interesting to see how the routers deal with that, but more importantly, how the fleet deals with that. So.
Well, interesting to hear his thoughts on going into his home port. Now remember, they are a little bit out to the eastern side. They're closer to the high pressure, and I just checked on the information behind me, and they've got about 17 knots of wind, whereas out to the left-hand side, Team Brunel and Dongfeng have got 18, 19. So expect to jibe soon from Charlie Enright and his crew. Let's have a look at the race course coming up. We've got plenty coming up, as Charlie said. So basically, we're going to be looking for the boats to be lifted up and then sort of jibing into this sort of prefrontal zone that he was talking about. And then once across, they'll be sort of firing up into dying conditions and in a sort of tricky. Well, let's call it a reach potentially, with the winds coming from the right-hand side there. So a reach into the final conditions, into Narragansett Bay, and finally into Newport. Now, a couple of you asked yesterday about the exclusion zone, and don't worry, we'll be getting him to answer those questions later on in the show. However, on Friday, we talked about all of the different elements that the sailors are using to make the boats go fast. And we've got, you can change the tack setting on all of the foresails, you can change the backstays, you can trim the sails, you can put the dagger boards down, you can cant the keel more or less. There are a multitude of things to do on these very, very tweaky and difficult to sail boats, the Volvo 65s. But one thing that we didn't talk about at all was, and this may sound a little bit surprising, but you can actually trim the hull and the way that it fits, the way that it has its relationship with the sea in terms of the longitudinal trim. So we forgot to talk about it, but thankfully Pete coming on board Sunkai Scallywag was there to pick up the slack.
Yeah, we moved the internal stack. We've got the front bulkhead here, so as it goes light, you're basically trying to move to either reduce wedded surface area, so by stacking forward when it's light, the breeze has just gone a bit light now, down to 11 knots, so we're moving everything out the back of the boat, up forward to windward to get righting moment, but to help lift the arse of the boat, obviously you've got a big wide area. That big wide area is just drag, so we're trying to reduce that as much as possible. Then as it gets breezy, we want the rudders in, we want more bow up effectively to help the boat steer, just again, put the arse of the boat in the water, lift the bow, help us steer around the waves. So we've had a fair bit of breeze overnight up to like 18 knots, so we've had everything in the back, but it's just starting to decrease now. So yeah, it's basically just to optimise the boat's performance.
So Pete there talking about the way that you trim the boat by moving the stack forward and aft. But in case you want an outside view, I left the studio a few moments later to get another perspective on this problem. To better explain this idea, I came down to our local neighborhood Volvo 70. Now this is Brazil 1 from the first edition of the Volvo 70 rule, and it's relatively narrow speaking, but it still explains this idea of having a really wide rear end, and that is really draggy because all of this flat surface here is drag, and that is a problem when you get into light conditions. So let's come and have a look at what the front end looks like, and we'll see why we want more of that and less of this. So this is the bow end, and as you can see, it's nice and knife-like. So the whole boat is really skinny up at the front. So instead of being 5.5 meters at the back end, you've got this this narrow knifing bow that can go through the waves in the light conditions with the least amount of resistance as possible. So how do you get more of the bow in the water and less of the back end? Well, let's come and have a look. So by now, 7 months into the race, you've seen lots of stacking going on. That's the sailors putting weight on the side of the boat to better counteract the force of the wind. So if you can imagine that that's in the water and the wind is blowing onto this side, the weight that we've got here on the side is really helping it to resist the force of the wind. However, we're not just talking about it's not just about stacking laterally to resist the force of the wind. It's all about trimming the hull, actually, and about getting either lifting the bow or lifting the stern, depending on the conditions. So the boats are sailing downwind right now in about 14 to 15 knots of wind. So that means that you want to get the weight forward on the boat. You don't need a lot of righting moment, so they'll be putting all of the weight sort of forward. And if you can imagine that this is all of the stack, all of the food, all of the sails, and indeed all of the people. So you can see that when the weight goes forward of the mast, then the bow goes into the water, and you can see that the stern comes out. Now when that's a Volvo 65, it's so wide, then all of that drag disappears and the boat becomes a lot more slippery. So that's the light wind configuration. But what we saw in the Southern Ocean, when it was really hooning, the boats were sailing in strong downwind conditions, then there was a risk of the sails pushing the bow of the boat into the water, and the boat was diving into the waves a little bit like this. So what they were doing then was stacking everything all the way at the back. So we had these dramatic images of the boat with all of the weight and all of the people sort of hanging on for dear life at the back of the boat. You can see that once you get weight at the back of the boat, particularly the ballast, that also comes into play in the Volvo 65, well, you can see that the reverse from our previous image is true. The stern is down, that's resisting the force of the wind trying to push the bow into the water, and now the bow is completely clear. So I'm getting a bad reputation with all of the models in the office. I think I've broken most of them so far, but put comments below if you want me to try and explain anything else by torturing any of these models. Anyway, yesterday we asked you to send in some questions for Vesta 7th Hour Racing and Charlie Enright, so here he is in the spotlight responding to your questions. Cool. Now, yesterday we spoke to Brad Reed a little bit about the Newport stopover, and we've got a question here from Mark Boussard asking where you're going to go to dinner in Newport so he can come and find you to say hi.
Yeah, I don't know. It's, having a home stopover is pretty funny, because you balance, trying to spend time with everybody else, but at the same time trying to spend time with your family, And, you get in that first night and you want to have a big team dinner with the whole group, but you also kind of want to go home and just, make pizza with your family. So, yeah, I don't know. It's tough to say because we're going to get in, hopefully sometime local, late night on the 7th. Hopefully the Celtics are still on, winning their Game 4 clincher against the 76ers. Maybe we can watch that in the Volvo Pavilion. But I'll probably just have a burger there and then hit the rack, if I had to guess. What hardware gets swapped out, and will there be a lot of work being done in the Newport stopover? That one there is from Jenny Vickery. Well, Newport's not a haul-out stopover. We just came from a haul-out stopover in Brazil after, it was clearly a grueling Southern Ocean leg, and for us, very complex, switching out our mast. So the boat will stay in the water, the rig will stay in. We'll probably take the sails off and give them a good inspection here after, 16-day leg and before going on a double-point transatlantic leg. There'll be some normal, engine system service, that'll go on. We'll take all our stackable equipment off and reassess what kind of weights we should be sailing at for this next leg. The food program will be a lot different on what's probably an 8-day leg versus a 16-day leg. So it's kind of everything off and start from scratch and then everything back on again. Nice
that you talked about your weight strategy, because Steffi Schiffer asks whether you still cut your toothbrushes in half.
It's funny. It's there's this age-old debate over weight. Is it good? Is it bad? Right? Because here in the Volvo we have the ability to stack our weight. So in a lot of essences, weight is good. But if you can't stack, it's something that's got to be on center line. It's inarguably better to keep it light. But what exact weight we should be sailing at is a big question over the course of a 16-day leg. Coming out of Brazil, it was really light, and I think some of the guys that were sailing lighter had a bit of a speed edge. But then we did, I think 6 days in a row of hard reaching into the trade winds. The boats that were a little heavier had an advantage there. So you kind of look at the climatology, because the leg is so long. It's really hard to take a guess as to what's going to be advantageous, either short term or at the finish or what have you. But to answer the question, I've done a little bit of a roundabout there. No, we don't cut our bamboo toothbrushes in half. Our sustainable bamboo toothbrushes stay intact.
Your navigator Simon Fisher got his fingers burned last time round. He lost this leg by 3 minutes. Is that sort of weighing on his mind a little bit? Does he really want to get this one right to sort of come good for that?
Yeah, I think so. little funny tidbit. My wife actually just emailed me today. They lost that leg to Dongfeng race team with Sam Greenfield, OBR, on board. And he is currently on board Brunel. And she said, you can't let that punk win back-to-back legs into Newport. So that's the real motivation on board right now. But I think, I think Simon's always out to win. And, in my humble opinion, he's gotten it right this race kind of more than anyone else. So, he puts a lot of time in, before the leg, during the leg, very calculated. And so, you always get his top game.
And then finally, I'm not sure if these are friends of yours, but we've got a message here from Chuck and June Vicoli, just saying, Charlie, Mark and Dana can't wait to welcome you home. So I hope you enjoy the last miles.
Oh, it's awfully nice. Thank you, guys.
So you may have heard Charlie make reference to the American OBR, Sam Greenfield, who at the moment is currently leading the race. He used to work for Oracle, so he knows Bermuda really, really well because he spent a few years there with the America's Cup. So he sent in this excellent clip talking about the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, this morning we entered the Bermuda Triangle,
which is a triangle between Bermuda, obviously, the Caribbean and Florida.
There's a lot of mystery surrounding the triangle, and numerous ships and aircraft have been lost in the past.
I haven't really lost or gained much in the Bermuda Triangle. Had a pretty good yacht race in Bermuda.
Did you win?
I've won the America's Cup with
really?
with Team New Zealand.
Wow, legend.
But we can't talk about that because Carl will get really really upset.
He's not happy.
Nah,
What did you lose?
Don't look at me like that.
Wow, that's a low blow.
Yeah, mate.
Wow. Now I'm really upset again. Thanks for that, Carlo. I go cry myself to sleep again.
Something must cause all of these unexplained disappearances. So,
I think it's a flying saucer, but at least...
fingers crossed we make it through and out the other side.
Hey guys, what's going on with the GPS? We've lost all comms. Oh, shit, the compass is gone too.
Nice to see such fun and games on board Brunel. But most importantly, this is a yacht race and they're in the lead and absolutely killing it. And they've still got 8.8 miles lead over Dongfeng race team at this moment. So it's going to be tight, but they're doing a great job at the front of the race. However, it wasn't always the case. This is a team that struggled early on, and when they got to Auckland, they were pretty glum. So, however, let's remember, they won the last leg and they're currently in the lead at the moment. So they have engineered an incredible turnaround, and one of the women behind that turnaround was Anna Marika, and she is a mental performance sort of team coach, and she was brought in to help get the team back on their feet, and she's done clearly a great job.
So when they came to Auckland, finishing 6th, they were really in a dark space together. And what happens if you are still in the forming stage of your team, you haven't have those skills and the team compass that makes you able to talk about it together and hold each other accountable for each other's best behavior. So what is the toxic situation that can happen then is that people start blaming and shaming, losing confidence in themselves, losing confidence in the team. And all this stuff was happening when they arrived in Auckland. So when I met them, when I flew in, they were kind of avoiding each other on the base. And I was able to do two things, because the first thing you have to do is let them blow off steam. And each and every one to tell what went wrong, what wasn't good, what should be improved. And it is to let off steam, but also because it's really good to pinpoint what didn't go well. And start out with all of those 9 individuals, because the individuals make the team. And when you talk to everybody, you kind of see the pattern of what didn't go well. And in all those individual conversations, when I let off the steam, I was able to address the first 2 weeks of leg 6, in which they sailed really well. And they forgot because of the result, but they sailed really well. And I asked each and every one of them, what do you do as an individual, interrelated, and as a team, where you sail really well? And we looked at those behaviors very specific. And then I asked to Bouwe and told him the patterns I saw, the dysfunctional and the functional patterns. And Bouwe is really nice. He can take some criticism, and he is all about learning. And because leadership behavior is really infectious, well, it helps the team to grow, to go in the learning mode again. And we prepared this crew meeting, and all the guys and girls are there. And Bouwe started out to tell each and everybody what he had heard about necessities of him improving his leadership behavior. And then asked each and every one of them to tell the team what should be improved, what he or she needed to get the best out of him or herself and of each other. And that is difficult, you know, because you have to put everything on the table, really vulnerable, and to connect, to be there with everything that is you. And that's really nice about the sailing team. They are so focused, and they want to win, and they want to sail and do a good job. So everybody did in the end. Everybody put everything on the table. And I was able to connect all those things and help them create a team compass, create some values they shared. And we put on the table a new ambition. Bouwe said, let's aim for 3rd place all over in Scheveningen in The Hague. And we created this team compass on how are we going to be as a team to reach for that ambition. And Pete and KP even asked me to put it down. We made a little piece of paper and sealed it and sticked it to the boats. And because it is essential to focus on your team compass and to hold each other accountable for it. So they did this leg to Itajaí, which was harsh, in every perspective, the weather and all the damage, and especially losing John. But they did a really good job. And when they arrived in Itajaí, I got all of them on the phone. And they said we had so much fun about the team compass we designed, and we held each other accountable in a really light-hearted way. Like KP coming to the deck now and then and saying, are we still informed? Are we still positive? So they hold each other accountable and got the best out of themselves, but more important, the best out of each other. And that's what you do. It is not about avoiding conflict, because they had harsh times and obviously some stuff went wrong, but they were able to hold each other accountable and focus on the team compass, on how to behave to thrive, how to find their best performance behaviors. And well, it worked out. So really nice. They did a good job.
Clearly, they are doing a good job, and that's excuse me. Let me try that again. That's it for us today, and there's only 548 miles remaining in the leg, so it's almost it for the leg as well. Can the newly fired up and charged and high-performing Team Brunel hang on for the win? Can the hometown heroes on board Vestas 11th Hour Racing squeak in and claim the top spot on the podium? Or indeed, can Charles Corderia and his team on Dongfang Race Team finally get a win in this leg, despite the fact that they're leading the overall? Incredible. Anyway, that's all from us now, but we'll be back tomorrow with a couple of quick fixes and some sort of daily updates before rolling into the arrivals, because the boats are going to be due to be arriving overnight on site in Newport, so between Monday and Tuesday. So that'll be early morning Tuesday European time, and we'll see you then with live arrivals.